Hello, everyone. This is Shannon Waller here, and thank you very much for joining me. I have a very special interview for you today with Jack Mitchell, who is chairman of Mitchell's, Richards, Marsh's, and Wilkes Bashard. And he is one of the people I absolutely appreciate so much for having written down his wisdom in two of my very favorite books, which is why they are written in my recommended reading section of the Team Success Handbook, which are Hug Your Customers and Hug Your People. So, Jack, thank you so much for spending the time with me today to kind of dive deep into what makes your store such an incredible success all around the country, and for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Well, thank you, Shannon. I'm just thrilled to be with you and your guests.
Thank you very much. So I want to start by some of the principles that are in Hug Your Customers. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the books, because the theme is the same for both, it's how you treat your customers. You need to treat your team the same way, which we'll get to later in the conversation. But in Hug Your Customers, you pay an incredible amount of attention to who your customers are as individuals. And that has really served you as being your principles, your guiding vision, how things have been done from when the store was started with your parents. And you have created what you call the hugging culture, which I absolutely love because I hug my clients all the time, as they know. So can you just, I know this is kind of a broad question, but can you just say why this resonates so much with you, and what is a hugging culture? And if someone were to go into your stores, what could they expect? What would the experience be like?
It's sort of a real sense when you walk in our stores. We hopefully have an environment just like your home. If you walked into our stores, you'd be greeted by whoever happens to be the closest person to you, and we would just greet you as if you were hopefully an old friend or maybe a first friend that was walking through the door. Hi there, how you doing? It's kind of hot down here today in Connecticut. We would welcome you into our home as in a friendly, warm, smiling, open way. Now, sometimes we sell clothes, but we're like a Harry Rosen, who I know you know, and Larry Rosen in Toronto and throughout Canada, great stores, friends of ours. Anyway, we would welcome you in, and we would begin to try to evaluate why you've come in a nice way. You might be, it's maybe hot. We may offer you some nice water, which like sparkling or still water, coffee, cappuccino, whatever. And we would try to make you again feel very welcome in the store. And then we would proceed to go through the selling process, which again would be to try to find small things about you or personal things about you. Do you like the Blue Jays or do you like God forbid, the Yankees? and we would get involved that way. Or maybe you're involved in the ballet and the fine arts. Obviously, San Francisco has a world-renowned ballet group and a symphony and so forth, which we don't have in Westport, Connecticut. So we would begin to get to know you on that level. Unless you said, look, I want 3 suits or I want 4 dresses and so forth, then we would jump right in and show you our collections. But we're all about trying to personalize the relationships. And as you know from reading my book, the origin of the word hugging to our culture really started. Would you like me to share that with you and
yes,
the guests?
Please, yes.
It was back well over 10 years ago, because the book, my Hug Your Customer book, was written 10 years ago, or was published 10 years ago. It was like in the year 2000, 2001. I was asked to be not a keynote speaker, but a panelist at our CEO Summit that's put on by Fairchild Publications in the United States. And I'm sure some of your Canadian retailers were there too. And anyway, the keynote speaker before our panel, he jumped up and down, and it was the .com era. He said that everybody, a decade from now, had to have a sexy, wonderful, warm, interactive website, and if you didn't have this great site, you were history, especially if you were a bricks and mortar channel of distribution store, and especially independent stores were history. We would not survive the next decade, or these big box stores were going to come and they were going to wipe out any smaller retailer. Well, everybody cheered, everybody standing ovation. This was 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and our panel went on right after that, Shannon, and there were 5 or 6 of us, and we each had 5 or 6 minutes to talk about our stores. And I got the first woman, she was a CEO of a big company, and she said essentially the same thing. gentleman said the same thing. Next speaker, I was number 3. And it was one of those stages where you sort of walk, if you want to, you could walk down the middle of the room, and I did, and I said, not only are we going to survive, we're going to thrive the next decade, because we're all about something I haven't even heard anybody use the word yet. We're about customers. Customers. I said, these customers are the center of the universe, and we're a company-wide customer-centric business. And we have real stores, and we know people's names and their nicknames and their birthdays and their anniversary dates, and they, again, kiddingly, do they like the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Blue Jays? We know they like Pepsi or Coke, and we walk them to the car after the sale, and we give them water, Pepsi, whatever it is. And it's not just myself and my family. It's all of our sales associates, our buyers. How the heck do buyers know what to buy for the customers if they're not on the selling floor and meeting and greeting the people and watching what they buy and asking good questions about why they're buying it, what they need that we don't have? And our shipping and receiving people, it's sort of like the golden rule. Everybody works on the selling floor. They come up and they wrap packages. And for our Jewish friends, we wrap with Hanukkah paper during the holidays. And our Christian friends, we obviously have Santa Claus or something that's more of a Christian motif. And we really try to personalize the relationships with each and every customer. And it's everybody, our fitters and our tailors. Dominic Condoleo has been with us for 50 years of the 53 years we've been in business. Our fitter, head tailor in Richards, Tulio, has been with us for 43 years. They know what these customers like and what they don't like, how they like to fit or not. Anyway, I got carried away, and I ran out of breath, sort of like I am now. And I sat down after my 5 or 6 minutes, and then when our panel was finished, I sat down, came down to a table, and there was a big round table, and the president of Bergdorf Goodman, which is probably the finest store in New York City and probably in most of North America, owned by Neiman Marcus, he put his finger in my face, Shannon. He said, the next thing you're going to tell me, Jack, is that you and your employees actually hug your customers. And I closed my eyes, and we just talked about my brother Bill. I could see my brother Bill. My brother Bill literally bear hugs everyone. And whether it be, the chairman of the board of General Electric or just any wonderful person that comes in the store, he's remarkable. And then I closed my eyes. I saw Frank Alagi, who's been at Richards for 48 years, hugging Matt Lauer and Al Roker even before Al lost all his weight. And I said, doesn't everybody hug their customers? And I realized right then that not everybody does hug their customers. Now, a hug can be a bear hug, but it's a metaphor, of course, Shannon. You know that, and we all, I'm sure your guests know that. It's a metaphor, any tiny act or deed that connects, the human connection with someone else, with a customer. And when you have that human connection, they begin to trust you, and that trust begins to develop over a period of time, and then you develop this personal and professional relationship, and they come back and they become loyal, trusted clients for life, forever.
So that means the loyalty of your customers is probably much higher. I know you focus on your own clients compared to other stores, but the loyalty of your clients from your stories and from things I've heard is phenomenal.
Well, we're very proud of that. I would say, yes, that's right. I mean, we all know from business that it's like an 80-20 rule. I mean, 80% of your business is done with 20% of your customers. Mm-hmm. And these 20% we actually use, as you know from reading my book, we call them clients. It's an in-house term that we use, and these are folks and valued friends that spend $5,000 or more in any one of the last revolving 3 years. And we know your name and your nickname and your birthday and something personal about you. And as we build this relationship, because you can't remember everybody and all the details, we actually put it into our database, which is, of course, even before the privacy laws. Our customers trust us, so they know that we would never misuse, sell any of this information or data. But we collect the data to serve the customers better, because we know if you're an international banker, you'll be traveling to Toronto, or you'll be traveling to the UK or China or wherever, Moscow, and you need to dress differently when you do that than you do if you're living in Hawaii. So you know those kinds of things about the person, and then you can better clothe them and better serve them if you know all of what they do and what they don't do. Then their birthdays. Well, you or an anniversary. I mean, am I covered for? We're in the jewelry business too, by the way. We're in the upper end men's and women's business. Plus, we're the leading jeweler now in Connecticut, and because our customers trust us, we can call them up on their anniversary and say, are you covered for your wife's 50th anniversary, or 25th, or 10th?
They're like, thank you for reminding me.
Yes, they thank us. They thank us, and then they come in and because we're friends. I mean, one of the taglines that my brother Bill loves to talk about, it was what we've used forever. It's called "Once a customer, always a friend." So once you become a customer or a client, you come back. We really view our customers as friends, and they do the same with us. And it sounds corny. It sounds, mom and pop-ish. Now, so we started as a mom and pop business when I was a sophomore at Wesleyan University, a small school here in Connecticut. My brother Bill was still only in high school, and mom and dad were in their mid-50s when my father hopped off the commuting train. Westport, Connecticut is about an hour commute from New York City, and he had ridden those trains for a long time, well over 25 years, and he decided, no mas, I'm going to open my own little store. And we started with 3 suits, a coffee pot that mom brought from home to serve our friends and who were, of course, our first customers, coffee, and a dream to be the very, very best store we could ever be in Westport, Connecticut, 800 square feet and 3 suits. And again, to fast forward that, with those 5 stores that you mentioned in an introduction for me, it's been 54 years, 53, 54 years, but we're now the largest independent, family-owned stores in our space, which is the luxury space, like a Harry Rosen, I'd like to say, or a Holt Renfrew in that space in the United States. Next to, we're not Neiman Marcus, but that's a public company or will be a public company, and you get Saks and Barney's and Nordstrom's behind them. In most of the areas, we're probably the largest, but we still think small. We still think one-on-one, personalizing every relationship we possibly can. So to answer your question in the long-winded way, when you come in, hopefully you feel that and our stores are as open as you can be. We try to keep them open so we can see our customers and they can see the sales associates and the tailors and make it feeling part of our family. And we treat them that way.
Well, and one of the other things you talk about is transparency. So, and I think that's both
very, very important, the transparency.
Yeah, we would call that happens backstage with your teams, and we'll talk about that. But it also happens front stage. Everyone can see what everyone else is doing. It feels like a community. The one thing first of all, I had written down before our conversation, once a customer, always a friend, because that was one of the quotes from the book that completely jumped out at me, which I appreciate that you mentioned, so that's great. The thing that really strikes me is a lot of people, and you talked at the beginning about I would call it high tech. And so that, and what all the other speakers were saying is you had to get all technological. And what you were saying is what really matters is still high touch. It's that personalized relationship. And one of the things that I'm incredibly aware of is in our very transactional world, things that we can buy on the internet without a personal connection, we want to pay as little as possible for it because we can easily shop and figure out who's got the cheapest price. But we are willing to pay a lot for people who care about us. And the number of people we run into on a day-to-day basis, especially in a shopping environment, that actually care is very few and far between. So it's, to my mind, what you offer becomes even more important and even more precious in our highly commoditized, high-tech kind of world that we have. Is that what you found?
I definitely think so. However, just to make sure you hear it and your audience hears it, we don't want to be $1 more than any legitimate retailer or monobrand that exists. And so, in other words, if you go online and you see a Cucinelli shirt from Cucinelli's website or Saks Fifth Avenue's website, it shouldn't be. Even though we're not in the online yet. It should never be less than our product.
Okay, thank you.
And that's very important to the conceptually, and our customers know that.
Yes.
Sort of, and they trust us that. And if it were, we would be on sale. I mean, we're on sale now for our spring summer collections because it's very hot here in Connecticut.
It's hot here too.
And so this personalization of the relationships is difficult to get online. Not saying it's impossible, but it's certainly not the same. So as you know, I have another simple paradigm in my book, my Hug Your Customer book. Most people in our space are talking more really about the product. They wake up in the morning. When I was a kid, when I bump into some of these industry leaders in Milan or Florence or New York, they grab me. Oh, what's selling? Is it 2-button, 3-button stripes? So they're all interested in product, and then of course there is price involved in it, and they may talk about customer service, but probably not. That's not top of mind. And so when we wake up in the morning, we think about personalizing customer service. And of course, you don't do that, Shannon. You know this. That's the business you're in, coaching. You don't do that in a vacuum. People give customer service. So
right.
We're all about trying to hire the right people, motivate the right people, educate them, and then let them be. Use your words in your book, the entrepreneur, the individual, feel like they're an owner in that whole selling process. And then we talk about the personalizing service, and then we happen to sell clothes. I was a kid by saying, well, then we sell clothing. But I'll put our product, because we know the customers, we try to buy for these customers. Literally saying, when my wife, who's been the driving force of our women's business, because it's well over 50% now, when I've been with her when she's bought Armani, either Collezione or Black Label in Milan, she'll have a printout that will show our top 100 Armani customers, sizes and styles and so forth. But what she knows probably 80 of those customers, because she's been on the selling floor, seeing them over the years buy these. So she thinks about the real customers and not just what she sees on the runway. So it's every bit of our DNA has been from mom and dad right through my brother and myself and my wife and second generation on to our 7 sons are all about this personalizing the relationship. But I will say also with the modern technology of the database that gives us the measuring things and the data to support. So it's a combination of the high touch, hugging your customers, with the high technology behind the scenes that enables us to know the differences between our customers, because you can't remember, we have 11,000 of these wonderful people that are called clients.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, and I totally agree. I'm all about using technology to leverage the relationship, but I think sometimes people get the equation mixed up. They put technology first.
There's no question that our driving force in our business is that we care about our customers. We're a value-based company, family-owned business, and it's all about our values of caring about people, integrity, as you say, transparency, hard work, confidence, respect, curiosity. We're all about these values that we have as a family, and that these values are in the business, and then we employ or we hire associates that have these same values, and then they execute them based on what they see around them and what they've always wanted to do, to be in an environment and that encourages them to build these personal relationships and have fun doing it. Fun is another big part of what we do. We have a good time, and we love everyone here. That maybe they don't want to love as much as I do, but if you talk to them privately, I think you'd find that most of them have been here. They've been here forever. So we very rarely lose people to competitors, because they really do enjoy what they do working with us.
When your associates are loyal, not just your clients, that says a whole lot about your culture. So let's dive into that, because I know that a lot of people, creating a really great company culture is a completely mysterious process. Culture, for most of them, is something that they end up with by accident, and it may or may not be something that they intended. So one of the things that I really appreciate that you have outlined in Hug Your People particularly is it's your success formula. It's what works at the stores, which are incredibly successful. So if anyone's wondering, it is, Jackie, you can share the number if you're inclined to, but in the book, it's well in the tens of millions of dollars. So if anyone thinks this is only for a small organization, no, it's not. This is it may sound like it's small, but in terms of the impact, in terms of being financially successful, the numbers are there to back it up. And that's one of the things I think is so powerful about this. And it's another reason why I like another entrepreneur that I'm very fond of, which is Tony Hsieh, which he wrote about in Delivering Happiness. You can have a fun, collaborative, celebrative have 100% customer service organization that is outrageously successful financially. And I love those two things being together. That makes me happy.
Well, when I wrote actually Hug Your Customers, I was a little not worried is the wrong word, but I was I thought maybe somebody in our family, again we're a family business, wouldn't want me to share the fact that we are profitable and that we like to make money. It's sort of a result of the culture that we have and our business practices. But as you know from reading the book, yes, we do well over $100 million and in our stores, and we have this simple formula of how we do it. If you think about it for a minute, if you have loyal customers or clients, they generally shop at regular price because you want somebody to call you, Shannon, and say, well, the new Armani or Cucinelli has just arrived, and we have something just set aside for you. You're a size 6, and blah blah. They know everything about you, and you're going to be on stage, and you're going to be doing this and that. So when they come in, also our goal is to have 65 to 70% of our business done at regular price, and you don't have to go to the best universities in North America to accounting to know that at regular price the margins are a lot better than on sale.
Yes.
Right? So and then if you have these personal relationships, the really marketing department are your sales associates, because they're the ones that call, they're the ones that follow up with personalized notes with real ink pens, they're the ones that know whether you like to email or not, and so forth. And so the sales associates, they're the ones that market to you. Now we have which I'll be happy to send to you, like Harry Rosen does, like Harry's magazine. We have our own magazines, but of course our vendors pay for most of the advertising in there. I mean, we can drop into the most affluent homes in Connecticut and Long Island and California now, the Bay Area in California, our magazine, and it has ads from Xenia and Cucinelli and Laura Piana and so forth. So they help support our marketing advertising efforts. And then, of course, we don't spend a dime if it doesn't really touch the customers. I mean, we don't, so when you do that, and you also have a frugal family tradition of, I mean, they always kid me, I mean, I still fly coach, and everybody flies coach. And that's a symbol of, I mean, of course I could afford to fly business class, but it's just a symbol of the fact that it doesn't touch the customer. I may be inconvenienced a little bit if I take the red eye home from California, but guess what? It symbolizes, without being pompous about it, that we really, we want to save every dime we possibly can. And anyway, long story short, I have that formula in our book, and guess what? It produces significant profits and cash flow. And so I'm proud of that, and our family is proud of that this warm, fuzzy stuff called hugging clearly does result in the bottom line. I mean, everybody wants to make a profit. You have to make a profit to be in business, and our family business does that through these very simple hugging strategies and execution. But that's another thing. One of my sons, Russell, always says we execute without sounding presumptuous very well. We try to execute and deliver this customer service, personalized customer service, every single time the customer comes in the store.
Well, it's something you pay attention to, and you said you don't like to make the same mistake twice, so you really have a lot of attention on that. So I want to move to your formula, because, by the way, I think your financial formula is incredibly practical and strategic. So I love both of those things, because that's sort of my two monikers. And you also have a really neat formula for your associates and how they feel and how you treat them, so that they can then deliver that superb customer service to your clients and customers. And the formula, if I can just go through it, is nice, trust, pride, include, and recognize. So I'm hoping we're going to have time to go through all of those, and some of them we'll spend a little bit more time on. But I have a couple of questions for you around nice, if you don't mind.
Of course.
So what does nice mean, and how do you find it? Those are my two main questions. Define nice, and then how do you actually attract it? Because a lot of people I know talk to me and say, Shannon, I can't find anyone who I want them to be. And you have somehow mastered that. So please share your secrets.
Of course, it is difficult to describe niceness, but you can recognize it and you can feel it when somebody is nice to you, or you can then reciprocate and be nice to them. I always kid. The reason in my first book, you may remember that I said that there were 4 elements that we hire for. I won't bore you with the 4. I'm not bore you, but tell you the 4. You know those. But the 5th one I picked up in my second book, and that was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I did a speech when I do, as you know, I do motivational speaking throughout the country and the world, and I use those 4 things of being positive and being honest and being competent and passionate to listen, learn, and grow. And this gentleman said he owned 54 hotels in Denver, or he was from Denver, but he owned across the United States. He said, "You forgot nice." He said, "Nice is." So of course I asked the same question you did. How do you determine nice? He said, "I'll give you a simple one, Jack." He said, "You traveled today from New York to Denver, and you know over the Mississippi, if not immediately, whether the person sitting next to you in your next seat is nice or not." Right? You just look at them. Are they smiling? Do they look happy? Did they bump into you? Did they elbow you off the chair? Did they help you with if you had to help the woman with her big bag on the thing, did she say thank you? Would you say appreciate you're doing that? When you had to powder your nose, did they spill the martini or the water all over you? And even if they did they apologize? You know, if you focus, Shannon, on whether the person is nice, you can even ask these questions like, I have in my book, well, what's the nicest thing you've ever done for somebody? And then they think about it, and they give you some stories, which I love, as you know from my books, stories of how they were nice, or not. If they they can't figure it out, then there's maybe something challenging about their personality, which wouldn't fit into our hugging culture. So nice is something that you can feel it, and as you know from how you treat people is one-on-one is what niceness is all about. I kid in my chapter on nice in my Hug Your People book. I mean, I kid that I say, is it Kathy with a K or Kathy with a C? You know the story. My oldest daughter-in-law. Only in terms of first my oldest son. We had a big engagement party. We were thrilled they were getting married. This was like 25 years ago, and of course I wrote this wonderful warm note because I really had got to respect her and love her, and I made that thing with her salutation with a C and not a K. Well, she obviously has forgiven me, but she's not forgotten. I mean.
Oh dear.
So, but those little things you pick up on being nice. Does somebody? Do they say good morning to you? I mean, top of the morning, or do they say good night, or do they give you a firm handshake? Little things you can pick up on. Do you want to be with this person for life? Because we, as you know from reading my books, we try to hire people for a career, for life, and I want to have nice people working for me or for us. It's just simple. And guess what? They want to come to a place. They want to wake up in the morning, and they want to come to a place where there are nice people here.
The thing that I really like about nice is it also means friendly. It means safe. One of the things that I was reading out loud to my husband last night as I was partially preparing for this interview, I said, where you say something about where people can be themselves, when they can be their real selves at work. And I said, Bruce, what do I always say about strategic coaches? He said, you say you can be your real self. I'm like, yes. And that's that is so rare. I mean, when we have people come into our company and all of a sudden you see their shoulders go down, their posture improves, they smile more because they're not playing defense. They're not protecting themselves. They're not having to cover up. They can be their real, genuine selves, and I found, I think like you have, that people are delightful. They are so fun and so interesting and have so much contribute if you just don't beat them up.
Oh, you'd never beat them up. Obviously, you have to, like you were saying in your book. I mean, you need to build on strengths. I mean, you build on their strengths, and I totally agree with you. I mean, I say it in the book, like you were saying. I mean, you have to. Our environment, the hugging environment, creates the thing of being transparent, open, and you can be yourself. I just came back from a trip to Alaska with a number of gentlemen that I do every year, and some of them say that it's the only time of the year they can really be themselves. And I candidly say to myself, that's a dash sad, because because here they are, they're very senior people in different industries and different walks of life. And I feel I'm always myself. Now, sometimes, obviously, I use my pause button or my mute button.
You have one? I don't have one.
especially as I've gone from being CEO to be chairman. But on the other hand, it really is important to really, listen, learn, and make it a spot where everybody can be themselves. Somebody has a sick child, they have to go home, or their husband or their spouse or their significant other, is whatever. And you build on those things, and then all of a sudden, it always comes back. I mean, you know what happens when you hug someone. I'm not lecturing to you. You know what they hug you back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this environment and your environment, I'm sure, where you are, is the same thing. It's definitely the freedom. Freedom is a huge word for me too. Huge word.
I love freedom. That's one of my favorites.
And the flip side, as Thomas Jefferson said, the flip side is responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So if you give people that freedom, most of the time, 99% of the time, then they're very responsible. And if they make a mistake, like we were talking about, I have a whole part of my book, of the first book, is I love mistakes.
Mm-hmm. I love that chapter.
I want people to, if they don't dare to risk something and try something new themselves, go for it, just do it. Like Nike said, or like you said in your book, then they don't have that freedom. Then I want them to do that.
That's right.
I don't want to make the same mistake twice, obviously, but we've all made it, and that's how we learn, is to making mistakes.
Well, one of the exercises in Strategic Coach, which most of the listeners will have gone through, is we call it the Experience Transformer, and usually you use it for experiences that did not quite go as planned. It works really well for things that did go well, right, and you can learn from it and repeat it. But often I tend to use it for things where I was like, that did not quite go quite the way I wanted it to. And so we do what's the experience, what worked, what didn't, knowing what we know now, what we do differently, and then what's our new series of strategies and actions. And it's brilliant because it gets people, first of all, and even in the worst situation, it wasn't all bad. And then in every good situation, something could have been improved. And then you get out of the blame game, which I think is what a lot of people by default end up doing, and into learning. And we, like you, love that people will take risks and love that people will step out there. And sometimes you're like, okay, I'm going to try this. Not quite sure how it's going to work out. And we're like, okay, well, we've got your back, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But that spirit of experimentation leads to new successes. I mean, since, as we were talking before the call, since, you've written the books, you've done a whole bunch of new business. You've added new lines. You've added new stores. And that didn't come out of someone not being willing to take a risk.
Right. But in a sense, not I say but, and I don't like the word but, by the way. I like and by the way, I have never thought of it as a risk, because again, I don't view ourselves as risk takers. Others can perceive it that way, but I mean, we always go through the exercises of what ifs, what if this, what if that, especially on these big major strategic moves like buying a store in California 3,000 miles away across our country. But we cover our downside with just like you do I was a kid where our family happens to like cards. We play poker a lot, for nickels and dimes, but we are very competitive. But you always cover your bets, and you don't bet more than you can afford, and you cover with different companies, different business ways to protect your downside, so that, and then on the back of a napkin, it will work if you've done the proper planning, the proper preparation, and then this is the big thing from my second book. You were asking about the guiding principles, and you include them. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to invite people to be part of that, the discussion. You have to then involve them. They have to feel included. And then, of course, they become better informed about the decision-making process, and then they become invested, my 5 eyes. Mm-hmm. And when you get these people, like when we went to California, we changed, or after a year, we changed the compensation system. They actually changed it because we got them involved in these 5 eyes. They meaning the sales associates. Because when you have people in our space on commission, and you're trying to build the title of your book, teamwork, right?
Yes.
The team success. Well, a big hitter comes in that buys a lot of clothes. You know that they're fighting over who's going to have that person, even though the relationship may be with one of them. If they're sick, they're on vacation, they're selling somebody else. It becomes a challenge, a huge challenge. And when you take the money side out of it, and you reward for teamwork, and you reward for positiveness, and you reward for these qualitative things like caring for people. And so, for example, we do have reviews of our associates and performance reviews, and we actually put in these qualitative things like teamwork, like positiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So people say, well, how can you can't quantify that? Well, of course you can. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, if I said to as you know, in one of my books, I didn't use the real person's name, but this person was a heavy seller here in Connecticut. Let's take California as an example. So you say to the person, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel you are as a team, on teamwork? And the person says, of course they're going to say, I'm the boss. What are they going to say? They're going to say, then they look at I'm a 7 or an 8. Well, when they learn that others perceive you, the Myers-Briggs, I'm sure
yes.
you and your, I view you as a 2. And rather than getting argumentative about it, you have more of a healthy discussion of why I feel the person's a 2 and not a 7 or an 8. Then you bring the person along to show them the changes in their behavior they have to be in order to be a team player. Or a positive, as they come in every day blaming the president or their spouse or their partner. I don't want those people. We want people that come in positive. And so, of course, my wife has never made a mistake. And I can assure you, the presidents in our country have made a lot. But we want to support the president. That's intuitively and educationally, we want to support our leaders. And so, you know what I'm saying. So we really, in our reviews, not only do we look at the number side, which is what most businesses do, and they compensate based on that. We actually have, that ingredient of the qualitative things, the hugging part of it, if you will,
mm-hmm. into
the performance, and it just builds so much better teamwork, so much more fun, helping each other with a sale. So much we had a fellow come back from vacation. He was in Italy, and in Randy, his name is, in California. And the first thing he said to me, I happened to be visiting California again, this was maybe 3 weeks ago, he said, Jack, this is the most unbelievable thing. I did more client business while I was away, because Joe helped my customer, Elizabeth helped my customers. In the old days, he said, I wouldn't have done any business,
right?
Obviously.
Well, that's wonderful. When people know that they can go away and still not be financially harmed by that, but in fact benefit, that's a big deal.
Exactly, and enhanced, actually, because of what's happening. Now, it's not perfect, all this and that, but the idea of putting, and it took us about 6 months to realize that needed to go into the job descriptions and measure it that way, because we measure everything, every SKU, every item that we sell, every customer, we know how much they buy or don't buy. So we needed to measure the qualitative things, even though it's more difficult than obviously looking at a number. But you can begin to express dialogues in different ways.
Well, and I think having a self-evaluation and then a team evaluation where other people view you, like if someone has a teamwork score of 2 and well, they think they're a 7 and you think they're a 2. I mean, I use the same formula in the entrepreneurial attitude exercise, and that's exactly how I suggest people use it. It's like if you're having a team member you're having issues with, have them evaluate themselves, and then you evaluate them and see where the differences are, not to critique them, but to have that productive coaching conversations. Like, here's how you're being perceived, and all of us have blind spots. So when
all of us do, sure.
Yeah, and so when you can do that in a positive way, it's like, okay, just so you may intend that, but you're not coming across that way. That's a supportive way to do it.
Excuse me for interrupting,
Sure.
but I have a simple one that I always kid about. It just so happens that my nonverbal, if I'm agreeing with you in a heavy conversation, an emotional conversation, to use your words from your book, and I start nodding the wrong way. I nod, horizontally rather than vertically, and I've been obviously told that over the years by people that aren't afraid to tell me how they feel. And I have to think about it in a heavy conversation. Otherwise, the person gets totally the wrong impression.
Right.
So that's a blind spot that I learned by people being open and candidly with a boss.
Okay, great. I want to get to trust, which is where you talk about being open, which I think is brilliant. But there's another couple other words that you use that I just want to make sure our audience hears. And that you have a definition of empathy, which is caring, compassion, cooperativeness, and consistency. And the cooperativeness one, that to me is really, which you just talked about in your example in California. But the cooperativeness, cooperation, the willingness to be working with someone else is for me really a hallmark of what we would call a unique ability team. It's where everyone realizes they have strengths, everyone realizes that they have quote unquote non-strengths, to use the politically correct term, and that when you can work together and field things to one another's strengths, we all win at a much higher level. And so I just want everyone to know that Jack's got some phenomenal definitions, and you've really put some deep thought into this. But before we get into the next story I want you to tell is one about trust. And you said this might be the most important one. And this goes back to openness and transparency. And I want to draw out one particular item here, because in your whole list, one of the things that really strikes me, Jack, is that you and Bill and all of your sons and obviously your parents, you've had to demonstrate these things. I mean, talking to you, it's clear you're a nice person. And And one of the things I think that sometimes leaders forget is that they need to emulate. They need to be the model of what they're looking for from their best team members. It can be easy to want someone else to be better than you are. And in fact, I like to hire people that are smarter than I am in lots of areas. But it's one of those things where who do you need to be in order to attract this type of people? So I'm mixing up two concepts here in terms of trust and leadership. But maybe you could give us your thoughts on each of those. Well,
of course, I think, leaders have to walk the walk, and just not talk the talk. I mean, clearly, by the way, I'm glad that you mentioned my brother and our family and everyone here, because it really is a team effort that we have here in the stores that we own, because I think they all feel that they're part of the team. And again, we're not perfect, but I do think that people know their roles and we respect their roles. And they execute on their particular roles and responsibilities. But to me, it's the whole idea of being open and transparent and showing up. I mean, take the value of obviously integrity, which is the most important one. I mean, you have to be honest, and you have to be open about it. You made a mistake, or it was because of the teamwork that we were able to achieve thus and such, or the great buy that our buyers bought really was responsible for bringing the right merchandise at the right time. Or you cannot, you have to be truthful all the time on everything. Mm-hmm. And if it's a personal, private matter, you can certainly say that. That you're going into an area that is just a personal matter, or stepping over a boundary, a particular boundary that somebody has set within either the business setting or in the personal setting. That's an important. I mean, we spent many days talking with our family business consultant in our family about boundaries. You can imagine we have eight different nuclear families within our family business.
Wow.
That are active and working in the business. So you have to know the boundaries that each nuclear family has for. Even like for our grandchildren. I mean, it's not, just to use your example, I mean, some families I just pop over and see our grandchildren. Sometimes others I know I call. Is it a good time for me to come? Mm-hmm. And I don't make, one is not better or worse, it's just the way it is. And so you have to know those boundaries. And the other one is, again, hard work. I mean, you have to show up. You have to be there. I mean, there isn't a single member of our team anywhere that isn't hardworking. So that's part of. But if you can imagine if we didn't show up for work, or if we only worked, we took vacations all the time, that wouldn't work. So we have to set the standards, the expectations and the standards for these values that are certainly part of our business, our family business. Mm-hmm.
I can imagine the complexity of that many different families, and I didn't share this with you earlier, but I also work with my sister and my mom.
There you go.
We have, within Strategic Coach, and Dan and Babs are the owners of the company, we have families. So we have brothers and sisters, and we've got siblings and parents, and yeah, it's sort of
wonderful.
unique.
Wonderful. I did not know that.
There's something called a 3-Waller meeting at Strategic Coach, which apparently is a fairly important one. But that's what Dan tells me. So there's also you really engender with your team an enormous sense of pride of what you do. And one of the things that impresses me from the books and even what you said today is that you've always had a vision of being the best. And when you aspire to that and you keep making progress to that, that is something that other people, let me put it this way. I think people really love and do their best when they are working towards something bigger than themselves. And yeah, and so to my mind, you've got pride down here, but they can be proud of what they can do as a team, which none of you would be able to do as an individual. And that to me is a really big deal, and I think it's something important to talk about.
Obviously, I think it's a huge, big deal, and I think that, as I said in the book, at least I think I said it in the book. Sometimes it's hard to remember exactly what I've said, but I mean, for years I always said we want to be the best upper-end men's and women's clothing store in the world. And then, since sometimes that sounds too pompous and too grandiose, so then I have to say, well, you have to only be the best you can be. Well, I've still really never given up the whole idea, as you say, of the vision. I want to be the best, but we're always, if best is always means you're going to have to continue to change and to grow and to listen and learn and make mistakes and then go ahead again. So it's always a path that and then people can contribute to it. So I think I don't back away from saying that I still feel I want to be the best I can be, but that means I have to continue to learn and listen and be part of groups and pick up ideas. But as you well know, ideas can come not just from other retailers; they can come from all the customers we have. I pick up and the speeches that I've done for 215 people or 16 people, different businesses. I learn something when I talk to investment bankers or nonprofits or hospitals. You pick up one or two gems everywhere you go, and then you come back to your business and translate it into the terms of our paradigm, and it makes sense. This whole innovative process is unbelievably rewarding and fun.
Mm-hmm. And profitable.
No, it's not impossible.
I said profitable. which I love it, because to my mind, business is really a huge opportunity for everyone to win. I think it's a place where people learn what they do that works, that does create value for other people. I mean, I get a really clear sense from both books about how it must, after a tough day, a long commute, what it must be like to walk into one of your stores, and all of a sudden you feel known. You feel cared about, you feel appreciated, you just basically feel welcomed. That is momentous. Just a really quick story. I had a flight in Air Canada. I was flying United, and I happened to land not far from my Air Canada desk, and I happened to see my favorite Air Canada guy, and he managed to get me on an earlier Air Canada flight. And I've been traveling a ton, and I was tired, as you've had this experience, Jack, I'm sure. Sure. And the fact that someone had done something nice to me and made it not a big deal, it almost brought tears to my eyes, which was slightly embarrassing at that moment. But I just felt so cared for, and it's so meaningful when someone is personal and cares about. And so I went and got them all Starbucks treats, and we had a little party. It was quite fun at the Air Canada desk last week. But that to me is so meaningful, and I think people just assume it's a transaction, but it's really caring. And so when you can build your business on that and keep looking for ways to create value, there's endless ways to be nice to people and to include them, and just be clearly you are being who you want to be in the world, in business, and that stores are a vehicle for that. And to me, it just sounds like such great fun.
It is fun. I mean, just to give you the same, just to build on your story about Air Canada. I mean, I came back from Alaska on the red eye Saturday night, and I still fly coach, just like I told you, but I consider it sort of a fun competitive game to see if I can be upgraded.
Yes.
and so my great assistant had me on the list and so forth, and we were emailing back and forth how high or low I was on the list. So I was able to, because of a friend, I got into the Delta Lounge, and anyway, I was in the lounge, and I befriended the woman Sue, who's going to make the determination. I think at least she'll have some degree of input whether I get upgraded or not. Anyway, bottom line, I got upgraded, but I'm pretty sure I would have been upgraded anyway. But she was so nice, and so I kept coming back every half hour, because we had a 2-hour layover, And she said, "Don't worry about Jack. I'm a hawk. I'm on top of it." By this time, it's a Sue-Jack relationship, right? Not John, which is my real name. So, of course, what I did first thing I came back this morning, I sent her a Hug Your Customer book.
Oh, great.
And I told her I was going to. I said, if you don't know this, but I wrote a book called Hug Your Customers, and you've been such a great hugger. And she was like, you should have seen the smile on her face.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to give my friend Paul Del Carlo, Air Canada. I'm sending you a Hug Your Customer book. Oh, that's awesome.
Okay.
All right. So one of the things I want to, first of all, the book is so packed with practical wisdom. I can't even begin to touch it. It would probably take us about 10 hours to get practical. So one of the things that you talk about, and you mentioned them already, but I want to mention them again, is that one of the ways that you introduce change to the company is that you have a 5-step way of doing it, which is to invite people to be in the decision. You solicit input, you include them, you involve them, and you invest in them.
Correct.
And I love that because I think a lot of times leaders get stuck with feeling like they have to be the one in charge. They have to be the one to make the decision. And ultimately that is true. But we have a term that Babs, who's co-owner of Strategic Coach, says she calls it collective intelligence. And we are so much smarter together than any one individual. And we have some pretty smart people here. But to my mind, what you've really done is written down a very easy way to remember how to do that and how to have people accept change in a way. And I'm sure you've made some much smarter decisions as a result of having that formula.
Oh, definitely. I think one of the ones that I used in the book was the change that we made in compensation, and Marsh is our store in Long Island. Mm-hmm. And we made the same 5I process in California. I mean, definitely we use Marsh's in Long Island as an easier one. I mean, when we bought that business, they all were the nicest people in the world. They were so forth, but the whole compensation system needed to be overhauled, and they knew it. They just didn't know what one they wanted. And we actually began we formed a little task force, and we got some of their leaders, their people that needed to be really included, and we included eventually almost everyone. And by the time we came out, we had people that hadn't talked to each other on a personal level. They had to talk to each other on a business level for some of them 10 years, 15 years. And they really, by changing the compensation and how they were paid and a few other little things, they became friends again, and the whole business just took off. So this whole idea of really including people in the decision-making process that they're going to be affected by then is so powerful. And we have so many meetings. I mean, candidly, my wife hates these meetings, because we do talk sometimes. It seems to be talking in circles, and my wife is a very analytical, black and white type of a person.
Get it done.
But what happens though is the more you talk it through, you can, by explaining things, you can change the behavior or change the opinion of somebody. Only they can change, as we all know. But they can begin if you are open to change. If you say, you know what, you have a good idea there. That's a terrific way of doing it, and you execute on that. Then all of a sudden they're saying, well, you know what, maybe you have a point here. I'll go along with this for a while. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, then they invest in it. Then they realize at the end, the last one investment, they're invested in the process. And maybe they wouldn't have voted for it or been. By the way, that's another one interesting that I have never published, but I will share it with you. We don't vote on anything. Mm. What happens when you have Shannon votes? You have winners and you have losers.
Right.
Right. My son Bob, who was really interesting, maybe a year ago, was on a country club board, and they had to replace a tennis. My son is a very good tennis player, and a tennis pro. And the bottom line was they got into a big, heavy discussion, and there was a 4-3 vote. Well, I don't even remember which side my son was on, but he came in and he said, I'm so glad, Dad, you and Uncle Bill had this idea. We're a consensus-driven leadership company, mm-hmm. business, because we if somebody really feels strongly not to do something, then we just don't do it. We try to convince the person, of course, they're wrong, or that they should be. Let's go back up, and we invite you into the process again, just give your input. But most of the time, we obviously, if my son Andrew, for example, is in charge of marketing, advertising, he proposes certain advertising moves, we normally say he just is reporting that he's doing it, and we go along with it. We support him.
Mm-hmm.
However, if maybe it touches something that's part of our strategic values or our family values, and we just say, no, you can't do it. Why? And then we say no. So we don't vote, though.
Mm-hmm.
If we vote, you have losers, and people feel they come to the table again as a loser, and you want winners, as you indicated that earlier in our conversation. It's so you want win-win,
mm-hmm.
and so anyway, we don't vote. So it's this whole idea of being included as one of our basic values is terribly, terribly important in our business.
I love it. The one last story, we're going to need to wrap up shortly because we'll be up to our hour, which is I could seriously talk to you for a very long time. But one of the stories that really impressed me from the book, so I'll tell it and then you can correct the details.
Okay, right.
And that was that there was someone who was really, she was super excited because she had achieved a sales level over someone else. Within, I don't know if it was in the store, within another store. And it was right. To the point where they were actually almost like trying to take business from another store. And this customer came here instead of went there. And you or it could have been Bill, kind of gently reminded her that you were actually all on the same team.
Right.
And that it was really about the whole company winning, not just her over another associate or another store. And I like that because I think competition can be used in a very, very powerful way, especially when it's winning, against the world, if that's or in poker. But when it's done against another associate, another team member, it's actually very dysfunctional, and it really does it tends to tear down the fabric of a company rather than build it up.
Right. Exactly.
So that was one of the stories in the book that really I've always remembered it, whether I've remembered it correctly or not. But I like that you were that intentional and that conscious about the bigger picture.
Well, we try to do that all the time. I mean, we clearly want the people to be competitive. We like competitiveness. I'm a very competitive person, but competitive achieving the goals that we all want to do together. And like you were saying earlier about being the best. But clearly, if it affects in a negative way the cooperation part of our value system, then it's not a win. It's a lose for the other person. And clearly, we really stress teamwork. Again, we're not perfect, but clearly, we don't want somebody stepping on somebody else's toes just because they can sell. Now, sometimes in our selling process, a customer will say, the chemistry isn't right. I'd rather be with Sally than Jane. And if that's the case, because again, we're not on commission, but that we try to build these personal relationships more with, an individual sales associate. And then what happens? That happens with all of us. Like I think I kidded in my book that the first time somebody wanted my brother, who was a tremendous seller in the old days, to wait on him rather than me, I didn't feel great about it. But guess what? What comes around goes around, and there were a few that were reversed.
Right.
And so the more you can recognize that, and the more you can make it so that everybody wins and nobody loses, it's a much happier team. And you constantly are talking about the teamwork. I mean, with my selling book that I was showing you earlier that I'm in the midst of writing. I mean, our buyers have to sell the sellers what's new in the marketplace, what the trends are. If we need to send that book out tonight to give to you, to give to the person at the Air Canada, I got to make sure that my assistant Amy does it right, and she goes down to Tony Gregario in our shipping department and gets it out on overnight. And if she doesn't smile just the right way and do it the right, she knows Tony's idiosyncrasies to get it done, right?
That's my responsibility, not yours, by the way. But I'll make sure that Paul gets it. That's on me. Yeah.
I know from reading your book, it's the same with mine. I mean, it is everyone's job. It is everybody's job to service the customers, and that's what we have to focus in on, making these wonderful customers come back and shop again and have fun and all that. And guess what? If they end up buying, I always kid Harry Rosen, who I obviously think Rosen's is a fantastic store in Canada. I mean, I've learned so much from the great Harry Rosen and from his son Larry, by the way, both of them. If they buy in Canada, that's another quick story maybe to end, which I don't know where it fits in what we've said, but when I visited Harry Rosen years ago with one of our managers in Greenwich, his name is Jeff. Jeff prided himself that the number 2 fellow at IBM was a great customer of ours, but he was a native from Toronto, but he came to the United States and worked for IBM. And Jeff was bragging in a nice way. I shouldn't say. He was saying what a great customer this. And we can look up on our computer, even on our iPads or our iPhones now or our BlackBerries, how much this gentleman spent. And he mentioned something that he was a great customer. Of course, the manager at Bloor Street said, "Guess what? He's our best customer."
Wow, that's awesome.
And the whole thing was, look, we were both servicing John, was his first name, and we were servicing him well. And he was a happy camper, a happy customer, and so that's the most important thing is to really get into the mindset that you want your customers to the best for your customers. And it sounds so simple, but but it's really the hallmark of what we do. We try to do anyway.
I know, I totally agree, and I think that's also, if you think about the issue with a customer wanting to go work with Bill instead of you, and then vice versa, when it's really about the customer. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. We can get over our own little personal, a little bit of a blow to the ego sometimes. But when you have something bigger than yourself, and customer service is what is absolutely most important for you, taking care of that person, because you personalize it in such a brilliant way and you explain it really clearly, that it's to my mind, that's important. That means that brings out the best in people. So having that bigger purpose in customers, I can't think of a better one. It's one that I know keeps us out of trouble at Strategic Coach. I was helping a client with something that another team member had done with them, and I was sort of taking it to the next level, and he was like, "Oh, do you think she'll be upset?" I'm like, "No, if she cares about you." Which she does. She'd be quite happy to have me take another crack at it. And so I said, because you ultimately are what matters. It's not about my position or jockeying over someone else. And that to me is ultimately what is possible in Unique Ability Teamwork Company, in a company like yours, where that level of working together and cooperation is possible, where it simply is not in another type of company. So, Jack, I am extraordinarily appreciative of you sharing your wisdom, and you have laid it out so clearly in your book. So everyone, if you have not yet got Hug Your Customers and Hug Your People, in the soon-to-come new selling book, which I'm very much looking forward to, please do. And the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that you have a hugging achievement test, nicknamed HAT, and the appendix of both books. So if anyone wants to go and sort of do a little bit of introspection and fill out an exercise, okay, how am I doing on the hugging scale? And I love hugging as a metaphor, although I think I take it very literally. How am I doing on that? So if anyone wants to up their hugging quotient, please take a look at the appendix, because it has a great quiz that you can do. So, Jack, I cannot thank you enough for your time. This has been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
I certainly have, Shannon. Thank you.
That's great. All right. Thanks very much.